Now, we have a lot of things today, but I will still do a very short book sharing with you. I may have mentioned that I'm reading Ulysses now by James Joyce. 提过吗? Amy says yes. Everybody else isn't sure, saying no. Well, anyway, I'm reading Ulysses by James Joyce, and it's a very famous book. If you look at any of the top 100 novels in the English language, Ulysses is often number 1 or number 2. And it's one of them, it's called the second most difficult novel to read in English. I don't know what the first most difficult is, I don't know. It is really difficult because Joyce had so much erudition. He was so erudite. Do you know that word? And that's an interesting one because of the rise and glide. Some people say erudite, but you can expect that the y is going to be dropped for some people because R 是属于 alveolar, 可以算 alveolar 了. So erudite or erudite, I've heard both. And erudition is 学问. He was so erudite. He read lots and lots of Greek and Latin and of course the English classics and French. He was extremely erudite or erudite. And when you know so much and you write a novel, you want to put your learning into the novel, and that's exactly what he did. So his novel is nearly impossible to read unless you have read all of the classics and know Greek and French and everything else like he did. And he ties his story to a lot of 典故 from Homer. And that's why it's called Ulysses. It's one day in the life of the main character, Leopold Bloom. And a lot of it is written in the very famous stream of consciousness style. In Chinese you call it 意识流, right. And what happens after a while is, although you don't understand it really when you read it, you start thinking like the book is written. Your thoughts start coming out like Joyce, and then you get worried. He describes every little detail of his day, and what happens is he describes going to the toilet. I happened to be listening when I was on Donghua Beilu. And so now every time I go by Donghua Beilu 那个地方会想到他上厕所的事情. That's what happens when you hear something in a certain place, it's always associated with that place. 相当恶心哦. So I keep thinking, why do I feel so gross when I walk in this place? I know why. 他在这里上过厕所. And yeah, and all the other gross things that people do but prefer not to talk about or hear about, you'll find all of them in Ulysses. And I got a very good reading of it. I don't find it easy to get through novels, reading print editions, because I have to read my linguistic stuff. I have to read that first. It's more important. But if I'm hiking or driving, I can't read print editions, so that means I can listen. And so this one is not from LibriVox, which I've told you about before. LibriVox has thousands and thousands of books for free, audiobooks for free. You can just download them, however many you want. And in many languages, not just English. There are some in Chinese, not so many, but they have some. It's usually things like 唐诗 and 四书. But they have things in French and German and Dutch and Russian. Mostly English, though. This one, though, is, I think it's called archive.org. Oops, not I. Archive.org. All you have to do is type in Ulysses audio, and you'll find it. It's the second link. It's a very, very good reading. It's done in dialect with characterizations. ARCHIVE means 档案. That's another place to find free audiobooks. And a lot of their books are actually on LibriVox, 有重叠. But archive.org, I think, has things that LibriVox doesn't. They have a lot of 杂七杂八的, like 以前的美国的广播剧, 那边也找得到. You can find just about anything there. So anyway, I'm reading Ulysses, and it's very hard to understand. You get all this 意识流 of crazy thoughts. You know, when your thoughts are disorganized, you're just thinking, you're walking along thinking, oh, I have to have my homework done by 5 o'clock, and I'm hungry. I think I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. And, you know, everything is just very 杂. Well, that's the way it is in much of Ulysses, although each chapter has a somewhat different style. At the end, it really gets all mushed together in stream of consciousness. So it's very hard to like this book. I don't enjoy it very much, but I feel a duty to finish it before I die. We call that a bucket list. A bucket list means things you're going to try to finish before you kick the bucket, right, before you die. So as you get older, you'll take that more seriously. You know that your days are limited. When you're young, you don't quite believe you're going to die. You just don't believe it. You think the world will end before you die or something like that. You don't really believe you're going to die. But after about 40, then you start believing you're going to die, and you realize you better use your time well because your days are limited. So I guess it's because it's on my bucket list. If it's number 2 on all these lists, I really should read it. It's sort of out of duty. I don't enjoy it a lot, and I don't understand everything. So just as a hint, if you ever put it on your bucket list, you probably need a book to understand the book, because it is so full of 典故 and Irish dialect and kind of crazy thoughts all coming together that you probably need help understanding it. And this is, I think, the classic, the one, not the only one, but this is one of the guidebooks to Ulysses that a lot of people recommend. It makes the whole story comprehensible and much simpler. So you have to read this and then read that. In addition, it's best if you've read Homer. So the Odyssey and the Iliad, especially the Odyssey, and also a previous work by Joyce called A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Now that's a normal book. You can read that and understand it. It's difficult and tiring, but you understand it. It's totally 听得懂, okay? 看得懂. That will help you with this because some of the characters are from that book. But in any case, I just wanted to share that with you. I didn't want to buy it. It's very expensive to buy online, and they have it in the library, so I just borrowed it. Okay, that's today's book sharing, Ulysses. There's also one little funny thing. It's a song that we heard when we were little. It's a parody. It's called Hello Mudda, Hello Fada, and you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. It talks about a little boy who's been sent off to summer camp, and he's telling his mother and father, I'm so lonely here, I'm having a miserable time. Why did you send me here? Please take me home. Except later on in the song, he says, oh, it stopped raining, and people are swimming and sailing. And he said, Mother, Father, please disregard this letter. 前面讲的就算了，我现在开始觉得好玩了。So it's a funny song if you want to hear Hello Mudda, Hello Fada. It's by Ellen Sherman. There's one line where it says, he's talking about the camp counselors, and he says, and they read to us from something called Ulysses. Because 因为里面的一些内容是相当 R 级的，就是成人级的。So 在这个小朋友唱的歌里面 he says, and they read to us from something called Ulysses. Uh-oh. 在美国是被禁过了，因为色情内容。Yeah. So 小孩子歌出现的话就是 terrible. All right, that's book sharing for today. Not related to phonetics, except that you find Irish dialect. Because he himself was Irish, he couldn't stand Irish people. He couldn't stand living in Ireland. He moved away from Ireland, but he wrote about Ireland after he left. Everything he wrote was mostly about Ireland. All right, here's our plan for today. Our test on Chapter 6 will be when? On Monday, the 24th. And I have some work to return to you, but the TAs would like to look at it first because I made a few tiny changes. They do a wonderful job in looking at your homework. They do a really, really great job. And 真的要肯定他们的工作，他们的贡献。I would like to next ask you about vowels and consonants, chapter 11. Wasn't that an easy chapter? Wasn't it easy? Didn't that feel good? All right, questions? Any questions? Quickly, quickly. We have a lot of stuff to do, yeah.
He said he made a model according to his mouth.
Right.
But, why the model can only produce vowels but not consonants? Because in the IPA chart we can easily describe the consonants, but vowel is harder to describe because it's a continuum. But why when we apply it on the model it's a counter?
Oh, it's just the opposite. That's right. I think what he said is he tried to make a model, but it didn't work really well. Isn't that what he said? Making a model to produce the sounds of language is quite difficult. I feel like looking for a a YouTube file, a YouTube video for you that shows a model made by a Japanese. It's 感觉好像是非常外太空的感觉. Somebody did make a model that produces the sounds of speech. It's pretty weird. It's really hard to make to produce convincing speech from such a model. It's difficult to make. It's not that easy. But later on, he used a computer to do it. And by a computer, you don't have to produce all of these fricative sounds and all of these stops. In a stop, you're going to have to put an sound and things like that. They're much harder to do with a computer. You can do it, but it's much easier to just input 3 formants. We haven't done a lot on formants, but we've done some on formants. You know more about formants this year than students other years because he's put a lot on acoustic phonetics towards the beginning of the book now. So it's much easier to just give the computer a bunch of numbers for formants 1, 2, and 3. 你只要是同时好像是合唱团的那个合音一个 chord. It's not hard to do on a computer. It's quite easy. You don't have to supply a lot of 噪音 and things like that. Those are much more complicated. So vowels are much easier to do on a computer. Yeah, consonants are more complicated.
It's the opposite of what human beings are doing.
When we're talking about articulatory descriptions, because we have things touching each other or vibrating or doing this or that, it's much more 具体, it's much more concrete and easy to describe. When we get to vowels, we're talking about hearing, and that's why it gets hard. But it's exactly because of that it's easy for a computer, because they're just numbers, basically. They're pitch numbers, they're frequencies, yeah. Okay? Does that make it clear? 可以吗? Anything else? Yes.
On page 119.
You don't need the and. You don't need the and. Try it again.
On page 119, there is a paragraph on how to make the R sound in English. It seems to me that the 2 descriptions are a bit similar, and I can't figure out which one I use. So,
Which paragraph are you on?
third
to the last. Okay.
Yes.
The R at the beginning of rod is difficult to describe for 2 reasons. First, it is pronounced in different ways in different dialects of English. And second, in most forms of General American and BBC English, all that you can readily feel is the contact between the sides of the tongue and the molar teeth. It's difficult to describe for the same reason that vowels are difficult to describe, because R is very much like a vowel. So that's the first point. It's hard to describe R because it behaves like a vowel. We don't have any real contact. Things get close and it's an approximate. So 接近音. So that describes that, or explains that. There's usually no contact between the tongue and the roof of the mouth. Many BBC English speakers have the tip of the tongue raised toward the roof of the mouth in the general location of the alveolar ridge, but many American speakers simply bunch the body of the tongue so that it is hard to say where the articulation is. So he's saying that for British English, it tends to be pronounced with the tip of the tongue close to the alveolar ridge. So very, very, very. It's more tip of the tongue close to the alveolar ridge. But for Americans, many of them just bunch up the tongue. 我现在是整个舌头都挤成一堆，挤在一堆了。Instead of just more relaxed, but the tip of the tongue is close to the alveolar ridge. I scrunch up the tongue. And that sounds more American to my ears, just listening to myself produce it. So very, very is less strong, but very, very sounds really American. Amy's nodding. Okay. Can you tell the difference? Amy, something interesting you can share?
I was wondering, because he speaks a more British accent, so I was wondering, how does he say the word very?
I didn't notice such.
How do you say it?
Very.
Very. If it's a little more relaxed, just tip of the tongue towards the alveolar ridge. Very, very. That's more tip of the tongue plus alveolar ridge approximate. But I tend to have bunching, but not as much as some people. Because when I hear Americans really bunching, it sounds 有点美国的过头那种感觉. And the time it really struck me, I can remember a time when I heard that kind of English spoken with really strong R's. It was really jarring because I was in Hong Kong at that time actually. And I hadn't been speaking English for a long time, and suddenly I heard these American businessmen talking with these really strong R's, and I was, wow, that's where I'm from? Good heavens, that's my culture? 突然间，哇，听得好像不是自己的。Yeah. And actually, I don't speak with R's that are that strong myself, but it really jarred me. I don't know if that made it clear or not.
So the very strong one is a very bunched.
Bunched, yeah. More bunching, I think, gives that really strong American sound to it that I don't really like. It's too American. Yeah. 有点美国过头的. Yeah. Mine is a bit bunched. Maybe not quite like a BBCR. Okay, that answered the question? Good enough? All right. Someone else? Anybody else? That's it? If that's it, then hand in your work. What chapter for next week? Next, we're going to have our dictation. So get paper ready, put your name and other information in the upper right-hand corner. Today, we're going to have data from Lakota. Lakota is the Native American language from about the area where I grew up. Not quite. Where I live, they speak Dakota. There are 3 varieties of the same language. Where I'm from, it's called Dakota or Sioux, S-I-O-U-X, Sioux. Sioux, and then the other main Indian language, which we're not doing today, is called Ojibwe. There are other names for it. They also call them Chippewa. Chippewa is no longer favored. We don't, it's not politically correct anymore so much. Ojibwe is still popular. And their own name is Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe, I think it's an I. I have a schwa there, so it's hard to remember. Anishinaabe sounds right. Anishinaabe. Let's try again. And the name of many ethnic groups in their own language often means people. So if you look at the name that a group of people calls itself, it's often the word for people. And that is the case with the Anishinaabe. I'm not sure now if it's I or E. Please somebody check this for me, Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe. I'm not sure which it is now. Anishinaabe. Somebody check. Okay, Anishinaabe means people, and that's the name they actually prefer, but people often say Ojibwe. And there are different spellings of Ojibwe. That's not the only one. So that's one group of languages in Minnesota. That's more towards the north. More towards the south, we have Sioux, and that was given to them by Europeans. Yeah.
A and I-S-H.
S-H what?
S-H-I-N-A-A-B-E.
E, yeah, I had a feeling. Double Nabi?
It had to be
N 后面是 double A 吗?
还有一个 A 有两个 A 都可以。
Oh, I will go with 1A. The one I remember has only 1A. Yeah, 后来想那个 Yeah, E 比较像. Right. Okay, Anishinaabe. There we go. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anishinaabe. That's the languages, or the language spoken more in the north of Minnesota, into Canada. And in the south, is the Sioux or Dakota, and sometimes it has an H in it. And another variety is called Lakota, and that's spoken in South Dakota. It's where my father's from. And there's a third variety called Nakota. Those are easy to remember. Dakota, Lakota, Nakota. And this is Lakota with an L. So I'm giving you real data from Dakota, from Lakota. And I'm going to tell you the vowels we're going to use. We're only going to use 4 different vowels. So I will be testing you on vowels, but it will only be 1 of 4. So if you get the 1 of the 4 correct, you'll have no problem. And the 4 vowels are E, ah, o. Not a diphthong. Those are the 4 vowels you'll need. Don't use anything else. That will solve some of your problems. Is it or a? Like, you don't have to worry about that. As for the consonants, you're going to have to pay close attention because you will find that they have several contrasts of the same place of articulation or at the same place of articulation. Everybody ready? Actually, they do have, we do have IPA and spelling. It's written in the Latin alphabet, but of course you don't need to write that. I'll show it to you when I give you the answers. I'll use the microphone, and please watch and listen carefully. Be careful for the sounds that we learned in this chapter, but I will tell you one thing, there are no implosives and no clicks. I can tell you that. So, no implosives, no clicks, I can tell you that. And there is a several-way distinction among the stops, I can tell you that much. Here we go. Watch and listen carefully. 1. And mark stress as well, because most of them have more than one syllable. Not all, most of them have more than one syllable. So mark the stress syllable. Number 1, everybody, okay? Put-e. Put-e. Can put a little space between the syllables, just for convenience. You don't have to. Make sure you mark stress. Put it in brackets. And since we have time while you're writing, I'll put the vowels up over here. Okay. And what I'm going to write is the meanings of the words. For Khmer, I didn't have the meanings of all the items, but for this dictation, I do. So, if the meaning helps you, then you're in luck. Let's go on. Number 1 again. Put-e. 2. A-pe. A-pe. Number 2 again. A-pe. A-pe. Number 3. Ing. Ing. Those are all the meanings for the items. Number 3 again. Ready? Ing. Ing. Number 4. Ok-o. Ok-o. Ready? Number 4 again. Ok-o. Ok-o. Number 5. Eh. Eh. Ready? Number 5 again. Eh. Eh. Number 5 again. Eh. Eh. Number 6. Gap-oja. Gap-oja. Watch your stops. Use your Mandarin ears to hear stops. Look up when you're ready. Number 6 again. Gap-oja. Gap-oja. Ready? Number 7. Ging. Ging. Ready? Number 7 again. Ging. Ging. Number 8. Got-eh. Got-eh. Number 8, got e. Got e. Number 9, ready? O, o. O, oh sorry, this is wrong. 取消了. Number 9, o, go. O, go. Number 9 again. O, go. O, go. Number 10. Pe. Pe. Number 10 again. Pe. Pe. I'm going to read through all of them 2 more times each. Ready? Number 1. Put e. Put e. Number 2. A pe. A pe. Number 3. King. King. Number 4. Ok o. Ok o. Number 5. E. E. Number 6. Gap oja. Gap oja. Number 7. Ging. Ging. Number 8. Gat e. Gat e. Number 9. O go. O go. Number 10. Pe. Pe. Need anything repeated? Number 7. Ging. 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 The first one. Put e. Put e. We okay now? All right, let's put the answers on the board. Please fit your transcription in this space. I'm going to put the spelling over here when you're done. Okay, please go ahead. Let's go. We're going to mark. How about if we exchange papers now? Exchange papers. Use a different colored pen. Always have a red pen with you in class. Yeah. Okay, so exchange papers, and we're going to mark. I guess I will use a red marker here. First one. First of all, I'm telling you that the stress is always on the second syllable, on all of them. Stress is on the second syllable in all of them. That's okay. We learn through mistakes, so don't feel bad, but learn from your mistakes. That's the huge value in mistakes is learning, because there will not be learning without them, as I keep saying. Okay, let's go. Shh. So this is pu. Pu.
But we don't have a u in the vowel.
Oh, that was my fault. I missed it. Okay, then 那就不算. Okay, 不算错. I missed it. 那是我自己漏了. That's the only u. That's the only u. My fault. I missed the u. I just wanted to help you with the vowels so you wouldn't freak out. So this is put. If you wrote o, 那就不要算错了. 可是你少了这个 h 就算错. Okay, so the u was my fault. So stress needs to be on the second syllable. Okay, 我不一定标准, but actually I practiced with audio files many times. Not this year. I designed this in 2010. Or 2011, actually. Questions? We okay now? So, put. Stress here, and this one's ejective. This one is aspirated. And then the next one is correct. Very good. So, ape. And then I said I was going to put the spelling up. I don't want to put the spelling in red. In the spelling, it's very close to the IPA. So for aspirated initial stops, it's going to be PH. And then the this vowel is written like this. All right, the second one, how can we spell it? Now you know how to spell it. A, PH, and then this vowel again, same vowel. And the third one, now this is a Taiwan English problem. It should be. What kind of a nasal is it? It's a velar nasal. Those of you who thought it was alveolar, you need to work on your nasals. That's a typical Taiwan English problem. You need to fix that. You need to hear alveolars and velars clearly. You need to be able to differentiate between the two very clearly. So 你 n 跟 n 分不清楚，你要好好的练。And how do we do it? First of all, go to the 师德的那篇。其实第二篇已经好了，我可以给你们。I think that will also help. But the things to use, there are two things to use, two reference points in Mandarin, or two sets of reference points in Mandarin. What are they? From the article, you know they are an and ang. An and ang can always help you. Nobody says ang trang. Nobody says that, right? That I know of. Nobody that you know, maybe. Nobody says ang trang. So when you say an tran, an, that's 绝对就是个 alveolar. So match an tran 的 an 那个 n to the sound you're hearing. 像的话就是 alveolar, 不像。它如果像什么肮脏的 ang, 像那个音的话，那就是 velar. So if you're still having problems, an, tran, an, alveolar. 肮脏 ang, velar. The other way to do it is, for the harder one I think is alveolar. N 点的 n. But don't just say n by itself. Put the 点 after it, because the D will keep your tongue in the right place. N 点. Everybody say it? Everybody says it with an alveolar articulation. 100%. 每个人都是 n, 都是舌尖音, 100%. So if you use n 点, you can also find the n. And that gives you a different vowel. A and a. Maybe don't match the vowels that you need. So n 点的 n, you can find it for sure. 你光看注音符号的 n 跟 n, 台湾人很多人已经不分了。可是 n 点的 n 你会分 right? Are we all clear on that or not? Please give me feedback. You're better than 大英英文. They're still really, they're very smart. Their English is quite good, but they're just, except for one student. All right. So this one, it's good you got the adjective, ing. And this is velar. Next one, this, yeah.
If she has an apostrophe before the K.
Oh, you can mark that because there's only one syllable. To mark stress, you can also put in, I said to please mark stress. If there's only one syllable, actually it doesn't matter. But yes, to mark stress, you can do that. I do that myself. No, I didn't actually. I thought I did. I didn't. 对，单音节的话，放跟不放都无所谓。All right, this one. O is correct except for the stress. We're going to move that. And that's the way I realize stress, and that's the way I remember it from the audio file. So now you know how it sounds when I'm stressing a syllable in some unknown language, or at least this one. So o. And then the spelling I haven't been putting up. They actually use the angma in their spelling. They use some special symbols. So they write it like this for ing plus the adjective mark. And then o is the same. There. And the next one is eh. This is correct. And if you put a stress mark, that's okay too. Don't need it. Elm tree. This is 榆树. Yeah. Or is it 榆? 榆, 对吗? Okay. Then its spelling will come. You can tell me the spelling. Ejective. E. And we've got a little mark here. It's all the same vowel. Okay? And then this one, I have to tell you, as far as I remember, they do not have voiced initials. voiced initial stops. So that's why I said use your Mandarin ears. Remember when I said use your Mandarin ears? Do your Mandarin ears have a ga sound? No, except for when I'm talking to Sophie and I say iban, 4点半. That's the only time you find voiced initials in Mandarin, okay? 就是外国人讲错的时候. All right, so this is not g, it's a K. I'll put it in red so it'll stand out. Gap oja, the rest is correct. Gap oja. If it were voiced, I will make it a bit more exaggerated because I want you to succeed. I'm not trying to trick you. So listen to the difference. This was gap oja, gap oja. If it were voiced, it would be gap oja, g, g. You can hear me getting all worked up for that g, right? So gap oja is incorrect. It's gap oja. Train your ears to watch out for that because, in fact, you're good at it. All you have to do is pay attention and remember which is which. If you don't hear that g sound, it's not voiced.
Mr. How would you pronounce retroflex Z in the dictation?
In contrast to the zh, you mean?
Yes.
Gapoja. I didn't 卷. I didn't retroflex it. So listen, I'll contrast the two. Gap o ja, gap ora, gap ora, ra ra ra, ra ja ra ja. You can use your Mandarin ears again. So 然后的然,然后. As opposed to ja, gap o ja. Are we okay on this one? Yes.
Where should we put the stretch mark?
Thank you. I forget this stuff. I forget lots of stuff. Gap o ja. It should be here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep.
Miss Zhong, because I thought that I think that in Taiwan Mandarin that the retroflex is not so clear, so they usually sounds like
No, I don't think so. I disagree. It's true that retroflexes in Taiwan are attenuated. 支持师, no problem. 支持师. It's almost like English, 支持师, but not the R. The R, we have two choices, and that is either 然后, you still hear the r. It does not 然后. This is zh. I never hear 然后 from a native speaker, do you? 然后, no. Not for zh. For 支持师, yes, I agree, but not for zh. You either have 然后, more Beijing, 然后, if you want to make it stronger, or you have 然后, le. Either zh or le, but not zh. In fact, foreigners, because in 微头马式, the zh sound is represented with a J. That's why you see like Stevie G was complaining about, what's her name? 什么若琳? 她姓什么? Chen? Zhang? 我忘了. Anyway, she's a singer. Don't you know these things? Wang? That's it. Sorry. Anyway, she writes her name, Ruolin. And Stevie G was complaining about the crazy romanization. But it's not crazy. This is just Wei Giles. Juo-lin. That's just a Wei Tuomashi. That's all. Nothing special. And the reason Wei Giles picked the J is because of the zh sound. But foreigners learning this system, they often replace it with the zh sound, and it sounds really dumb. 好热. 天气好热. Sounds terrible, right? All right, that's enough. Let's keep going, unless we have questions.
How do you distinguish between fictive and affective?
How do we, so fricative and affricate? That's an old question, comes up very often. How do we distinguish between je and je, right? Is that the question? That's an old question. All right, for this one, it's easy. Here's my standard answer. Take a sh, start with sh, everybody? All right, add voicing. Good, perfect. You've got a je. Some people find this really hard to learn or to teach, but that's all you have to do. Start with sh. No Taiwanese has trouble with sh. Sh that I can remember right now. Sh. There you go. Now for this one, just use this. All right? And then just make it short. Zhe. There we go. 就是这是什么的这. Can you hear the difference? Zhe. This is not zhe. Yeah. Just sh. Now it's clear. So you've got easy resources from English and Mandarin, and you can even use a Taiwanese sh if you want, because the Taiwanese sh sounds like this anyway. So sh and zhe. This one is more like a stop or like a fricative. I've asked this before in class. More like a stop or a fricative? More like a stop. We tend to make it short. You can make it longer, but then this is the only part we can make long. We can't make this long. So for example, judge. We're going to lengthen this part. It behaves more like a stop. It's both. 它有两种发音方式的性质，也像色音，也像擦音。可是色擦音比较像色音。Okay? We clear? Any other questions before we go on? That was the bell, but we're going to finish this. The next one, and we didn't put up the spelling. And they use this symbol. It's a Z with a dot over it. This is the symbol they use in their spelling. Gap oja. And then number 7, ging, is correct. That's good. And that's spelled the same in their spelling, in their orthography. They actually use an engma, as I mentioned above. Ging. And then got Everything's okay except for where you put the stress mark. The stress comes before the stop. Okay? Got But it's good that you got the g with the K. And the next one, oko, which I read wrong the first time, is just written like this. And then the last one, pe. Tell me how to spell it. Tell me how to pronounce this letter. No, this letter. Look where I'm pointing. No, I'm sorry. The name of the letter, not pronounce the letter. I should have said. What's the name of this letter?
H.
Yes, Jerome, please.
H.
Listen to Jerome. Do it like he does.
H.
Everybody?
H.
Don't say.
H.
Yes. Etch is an English word. It means 刻在金属上. And often you can do it either with an instrument or you could use a chemical to etch. There's a toy called Etch-a-Sketch. I don't want to get carried away with too many things. But etch, that's a word. The letter is pronounced H. A, B, C to A. Everyone H.
H.
All right, now let's go back to spelling this word. Spell. P, H, E with a accent aigu. Right. Okay. I missed that. Let's see if I can, I'll just put it in here. And that one is, you can spell it for me. Go. K. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Yep, that's it. Anything else you want to ask? Wasn't it kind of fun, actually? Okay, that's a real language, real data. You know, I don't like manufactured data. Unless it's really simple, then I can deal with it more easily. But this is real data. You can find the audio files on the internet if you look for Lakota lessons, Lakota. Just do a Google search on Lakota, you will find this stuff. I don't know if I put the link on some years ago or not, but you can easily find it, I think, on the internet. Any other questions? Please have a look at your own paper. Make sure that nothing was marked unfairly and hand in your paper. Yeah.
Sure, I have an initial glottal stop.
That's okay. Initial glottal stop is fine. You don't need it, but it's fine. Because before we pronounce a vowel, an initial vowel, we often have a glottal stop in almost any language. Anything else? 还有没有? Okay, have a look at your paper, hand it in, and it's break time. All right, our plan for the rest of the class, we're going to now go over the summary at the end of chapter 6. We're going to go over your written exercises, so keep your red pens at the ready. We're going to do the performance exercises, and that will review the sounds, these weird, unusual sounds, which are not really so unusual. If you leave America and China for a while, you find they're not really that unusual, some of them. We'll do the performance exercises, and if there's any extra time left, we'll start on chapter 7. That's the plan for the rest of second hour. Let's try to be efficient, but I also want to be thorough and clear. So I often will end up going slow just in the interest of being clear. If it sounds like some of you are not understanding something, I would rather take extra time and go over it one more time than keep moving on and then not digesting what we've covered. Yeah? Okay. Whose turn is it? We're on table 6.8. We're just going to go over each one. We'll have to do it slowly. We'll only do one line at a time, and then we'll discuss it and practice it before moving on to the next line. So table 6.8, title is?
Table 6.8, the principal actions of the glottis.
Very good. All right, keep those words in mind because it's very easy to just 念过去，然后不记得那个标题讲什么。The principal actions, 一些怎么样行动作为 whatever you want to call it 动作 of the glottis. 我们现在讲的是喉这边。First of all,
glottal stop. Vocal folds together.
and the symbol is a question mark with no dot, and it is not a tap. And a tap is not written as a backwards glottal stop symbol. Remember, I think Sophie had to tell you like 5 times or something last semester. A tap looks like a cane. 就是一个拐杖的一个形状，然后下面有个底线. This is just an ordinary question mark with no dot, a glottal stop. And we pronounce it as Everyone? So we opened and closed our glottis very quickly. If it's at the end of a word, it's just a quick closure. For example, we use the example, for example, 吃饭的吃. Go ahead. 夹就是闭着紧闭着很快. So we don't have to open and close it. It's already open from the vowel, and it closes quickly for our final glottal stop. And at the beginning of a word, like one of you put a glottal stop before the vowel or whatever it is. Usually when we say a word that starts with a vowel, the first sound is not a vowel but a glottal stop. 第一个音是而不是一个 vowel. So a glottal stop is a very, very important sound to master. And and It has lots and lots of uses. It is not a phoneme in English, but I mentioned a language in which it is a phoneme last semester. Hawaiian, very good, you got it. Okay, Jaffin. Hawaiian, they have very few consonants. They have p, they have h, they have no t. They do have a m and n. They also have n. They don't have many more. They don't have s. They're missing most of the consonants we're familiar with. But is a consonant in Hawaii. So we pronounce Hawaii in Hawaiian is Hawaii, Hawaii. 然后女生爱穿的那个像睡衣的长袍叫 mu'u. It's M-U, glottal stop U, M-U, glottal stop U. It's reduplicated. So mu'u. That is actually a phoneme in Hawaiian. All right, go ahead.
Number 2, ejective. Vocal folds together and moving upward.
So 紧闭着你的声带，就是声带两片要紧闭在一起。And then we We also execute the articulation for the stop, if it's velar or if it's alveolar or if it's bilabial or whatever. And actually, there are some that we didn't learn here because we haven't learned about them yet. We'll learn about them in chapter 7. And one of them is a uvular stop. We learned it a little bit last semester through the tutorials, remember? The plosives and voicing tutorials. So, ah, ah, ah. Well, that was an adjective. Ah, 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 ah. And this sound, as I mentioned, is very common in which languages? Ah, ah. It can also be voiced. Ga, 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 ga. Voiceless, voiced. It's very common in the Aboriginal languages of Taiwan. As far as I know, most of the Aboriginal languages of Taiwan have uvular stops. And nasals as well, probably. So this is a very useful sound to be familiar with being in Taiwan. So we didn't learn about the uvular ejective, which we have in Georgian, and that's ah, 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 ah. It often gets a little affricated. Ah, okay? Because we haven't learned that actually formally in this textbook. So let's do the 4 ejectives that they list here. Everybody, the first one? Ah. Put an I after it's easier. Ah. Second? Ah. Third? Ah. And the fourth? Ah. Okay, that's not a stop. It's a fricative, but it can also be ejective. And keep going.
Number 3, implosives. Closed vocal folds moving downward. Usually nearly closed vocal folds moving downward with regular vibrations or creaky voice.
All right. And you're still using a falling pitch in most of your pauses. It's not so bad for a table. Actually, it works okay for a table. But we still should use a continuation rise when we've got something coming. So listen, usually nearly closed. I made nearly really strong because we want to emphasize it. It's a kind of contrast and emphasis. Usually nearly closed vocal folds moving downward, downward, continuation rise. With regular vibrations, continuation rise. Or creaky voice. Can you try it that way, Jerome?
Usually nearly closed.
From the beginning?
Closed vocal folds moving downward.
Downward.
Moving downward.
Mm-hmm.
Usually nearly closed vocal folds moving downward with regular vibrations or creaky
Vibrations.
voice. Vibrations or creaky voice.
All right, please make that one of your weekly pronunciation goals. Continuation. Is it already one or not yet?
It's already one from, I've already put that in my list
Okay, for which week?
for this week.
Good, that's perfect. So for this week, work on your continuation rise because you're very good overall. There's no arguing about that. But let's just focus on the things that you can do better, and one is continuation rise. So the vocal folds are closed, and they're moving downward. And usually, although they're closed, actually a little air is coming up, so they're not completely closed. We've got little bubbles of air coming up because we have regular vibrations because we're often using creaky voice when we're doing implosives. So let's try these. Repeat after me with ah, ba, ba. So close your mouth completely and your nose as well. Don't let any air in from your nose either. So close your mouth and your nose, but you don't have to pinch it or anything. Just use your velum. And then make a swallowing sound, and that will show you how implosives work. Nothing is allowed through your nose. If you're going it's a nasal. No nasal. Plug up your nose like you're going to go swimming. Everybody plug your nose. Say plug your nose, so I want to hear if you're really plugging your nose. Yours sounds too normal. Make it sound more plug your nose. You can't make an N. It will become a D. Plug your nose. It becomes a D because you can't make a nasal. Plug your nose. Everyone? Plug your nose. All right, if you plug your nose and close your lips, close your mouth. If you're going, you're letting air in through your nose. Cheating. Soapy. Plug your nose. You're going swimming. Do you swim? Do you swim? 你会游泳吗? No, zero. Looking at who? Me. Do you swim? All right. So when you go underwater, you have to hold your breath. 要屏息. And the way you hold it in is by raising your velum, so air doesn't come in through your nose. Because you don't hold your nose when you swim, and you don't use a nose pincer, right? So, or what do you call those? Nose plug. So use that 那个动作就是潜水的那个动作，你的鼻子用的那个动作。Then you're plugging your nose, and then you won't make a nasal. So let's try it again. Ba. Ba. No air through your nose, no air through your mouth, and swallow. Okay, ba. 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 This is going to sound wonderful in the video. Ba. All right, let's try the alveolar. It's a little harder. Ba is the easiest. Da. Da. Ga. Ga. Okay? That's probably the hardest. If you're having trouble with it, it's understandable, but please still try to do it. Use the instructions I just gave you. Close your mouth, plug up your nose like you're swimming, and then make a swallowing noise. And then prepare to say a b and then an I after it. Ba. Ba. Start swallowing and don't open your mouth till you're halfway through the swallow. Ba. 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 Did you hear my instructions? Did you understand my instructions? 听得懂吗? Okay, write them down. Practice implosives. Okay, I'm not going to require that you absolutely master them immediately, but I really would like you to learn implosives before the semester's up. Everybody try to learn implosives. You can do it. If you're still having trouble with ejectives, work on ejectives. Nobody should have trouble with a glottal stop. Basketball hits your tummy. Everyone can do that. So ejectives, if you can't do them yet, practice. You can get them. Ejectives are not as difficult. If you're having trouble, go to Carol, okay? Or is there anybody besides Carol who's pretty good at ejectives? Anybody? Who else is pretty good? 不要客气。还有谁还不错? I think Jerome also has it, no problem? All right, you can go to Jerome, you can go to Carol. How about you, Amy? How are you doing? Amy's fine. You can go to Amy. Okay, how about Vivian? Okay, so 你周围有3个人可以请教。Sylvie, how are you doing? You can do all 3. Yes. Let's try the S. There you go. You got it. Okay, Bella? You have it. Okay, fine. Annie? Okay, you're using pulmonic. You have to close your glottis. 屏息。屏息的情况之下再念一个 K， 不让空气进你的肺。不能跟你的肺通。I think, okay, everybody quiet. It's Annie's turn. I can't tell if it's pulmonic or not. Okay, please practice with anybody on this side of the room. Vivian also needs a little help. Okay, Yumi? Okay, use not the, it's voiceless. Okay, not the, you don't have to put a vowel there. I think you sort of got it. It's like you're about 1/3 of the way there. I think you're about there. More practice, I think you'll be okay. Miranda? You're fine. You got it. Okay, Tina? It sounds pulmonic. I think you're going to need a little help from a classmate. Okay, Wendy, can you do it? I think you've got it. Okay? So there's just a few of you that need to do a little more work on ejectives, and that's pretty good. That's awfully good. For implosives, who can do implosives? Carol, you can do them?
I'm not sure if it is impulsive.
We'll try it with ah. Yeah, it sounds good. Ba, ba, ba. It's coming in though, it's not ba. Just heavily voiced is not implosive. Here's heavily voiced and then I'll do implosive. Okay? Ba. It sounds pretty good. It's sometimes hard to tell between ba and ba. Ba. I have a kind of a twangy sound, so you can tell it's definitely implosive. And it's more twangy than it is usually for a native speaker. So, ba. Ba. Everyone? Ba. 要吞，同时要吞。Ba. Da. 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 Uh-huh. Ga. Uh-huh. Okay. Next. This one's easier.
Number 4, creaky voice. Vocal folds held tightly together posteriorly, but vibrating, usually at a low rate anteriorly.
Oh, you read those adverbs beautifully. I bet native speakers would have a hard time reading them because we don't usually use those two words as adverbs, but you read them absolutely perfectly, with R's even, okay? So, posteriorly, anteriorly. 我也没念错, but those are things that I'd probably misread if I were going in a hurry. All right, so vocal folds held tightly together, posteriorly, but vibrating usually at a very low rate. That means 它的频率低到你可以数得出来1秒钟有几下. Anteriorly means in the front. So that's easy. First of all, you're all good at it. Nobody has problems with that. Let's do it now while we are also making a voiced initial stop. And then put an I after it. Okay, you're fine with creaks. Next.
Number 5, modal voice.
Oh, not 5. 5. Everyone, 5.
5.
I'm going to teach that Sunday in Kaohsiung. I'm going to Kaohsiung to give a pronunciation workshop. And that will be one thing, because I'm one of the test items, they won't get to see the video before the workshop, so it's okay, is 5 and 5. I'm going to say 5 and then see if they check 5, and I bet they will. Okay, because I've done it many times before. Go ahead.
Number 5, modal voice.
Okay, modal voice, because voice is repeated. So creaky voice, modal voice, and?
Modal voice. Regular vibrations of the vocal folds.
Right, and this is just normal voicing. Modal is in parentheses because this is the unmarked use of voice. 没有标记, voice 没有标记的时候, it's unmarked, then it's modal voice, it means ordinary voice. We really don't need a special word, but to be fancy, we gave it a special word. So, everybody, ba, da, ga. All right, next.
Number 6, breathy voice, murmur.
Right?
Vocal folds vibrating without coming fully together.
Without coming
fully together.
Uh-huh.
Often during a stop release.
Stop release.
Stop release.
Yeah, your E is still too long. Stop release.
Stop release.
There's something funny about it in many Taiwanese reading that word, release. It gets too long. You have to make it really short. Cut it short. Listen carefully. Use echo. Use the echo. Release. Listen a few times. Release. Release. It's not release. 只要是多半拍的话就是不对. Nobody will bug you about it except me. However, it's not quite right if you say release. It's release. 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 Okay, use the echo and repeat. Release. Go. Release. Use the echo. Release. Go. Release. Okay, it's tending to be a little too long because you're trying hard. When you try too hard, then you make it longer. Release. Go. Release. 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 It's getting better, okay? This is breathy voice. That's also not too difficult. So let's do it with an initial b, ba, ba. All right. So in what languages do we find that? Sindhi, Hindi? And then the breathy vowels we find in another language of India, Gujarati. I remember I reminded you, for the sake of the quiz, please remember some of these important names or representative languages that have these sounds. So Gujarati has the breathy vowels. Hindi, Sindhi have the breathy stops. And next?
Number 7, voiceless. Vocal folds apart.
Okay. Ba, da, ga, sa. Everyone? And voiceless nasals. Ma, na, na. Let's do those again. Ma, na, na. And we have those in which language? A representative language with voiceless nasals? Burmese. Just remember Burmese. And my Burmese friend just wrote me over Facebook the other day, so I've got that way at the front of my mind. Burmese has voiceless nasals. It's not the only language with voiceless nasals, but it's a very good representative language that has voiceless nasals. Once more. Ma, na, na. And the last one?
Last one, aspirated. Vocal folds apart.
Vocal folds.
Vocal folds apart during the release of an articulation.
All right, and I don't say during, everyone. I say during. And for British, remember it's during, yeah. And those are like pa, ta, ka, sa. Everyone? All right, so we can sort of taotai the ones that are really easy for you, although you need to remember representative languages that have these sounds. What language has aspirated, voiceless initial stops? English. And? Mandarin is a good. Okay, English and Mandarin. You need to keep these in mind. What language has, we already did the voiceless nasals. Everyone remembers that's Burmese. Good. How about voiceless unaspirated initial stops? What language has those? Voiceless, unaspirated initial stops. Give me a couple example languages. Mandarin. What else? French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, you name it, they all have it. Okay? How about breathy initial stops that are breathy initial stops? Sindhi, Hindi. Yeah? Gujarati we're going to save for the vowels, the breathy vowels. Gujarati, right? And then for modal voice, b, d. Fully voiced initial stops. Where do we have those? Do we have them in Mandarin? No. Good. Do we have them in Cantonese? No. Okay. However, they are found in Shanghai Hua. 吴语里面常常有. So it's not as though Chinese never use them. It just happens to be our dialects familiar to us. How about 闽南语? Yo, right. And also, the funny thing about 闽南语 is it's missing a voiced initial. We have li, right? Mi, li. And we have t, you. We have, so that's g, that's velar. But we don't have di, 是没有. But that's a gap in the system. But that's because there's something funny going on in 闽南语 with which other sound. 相关的另外一个音跟它有点暧昧关系. How do you say 1 week? 一礼拜, right? How do you say 十里? 那第二个音节的第一个音是什么音? It's a tap. It's a lateral tap. Basically, it's an L. It's an L. So initial L in 闽南语 often ends up to be something like de, 西de, 西de, 西de. But it's a lateral tap. 不是一般的英文的那个 tap 是 central 还是 lateral? Water. It's central because it's 西de, 西de is lateral. Sometimes you hear people say 西嘞 or 查啦, 有点像 L. It's a lateral tap. In 闽南语 it's a tap. It definitely is a tap. 不能延长. You can't say 西嘞是不可以的. 系列是可以，系列都可以，可是不能长。So that's why it's a very interesting sound. And it's connected to English in that way. We both have American English. We have taps. British English doesn't always have taps like that. So a lateral tap in Minangyu, that's good to know. And that's interfering with an initial voice D. So there is no initial voice D in Minangyu. We've got that lateral tap kind of interfering, and that sort of takes that gap, it gets into that gap. Creaky voice, what's a good language for creaky voice? Mandarin, not Mandarin, Mandarin. And there's no E at the end of Mandarin, everybody. No E. Mandarin 后面不加 E 的哦. A lot of you put an E there for some reason. Japanese 后面不是 SS, 是 SE. Some of you spell it wrong. Besides Mandarin, though, we also learned about another language with creaky voice or laryngalized sounds. Hausa. Yeah, Hausa. And that's spoken in? Where's it spoken? Somewhere in Africa. That's pretty good. Where in Africa? Not South Africa. Nigeria. Yeah, Hausa is spoken in Nigeria, probably other countries as well. It's got a huge number of speakers. And then implosives we have in which language? Which language? You can go back and check. Sindhi. Yeah, we have them in Sindhi. And ejectives we have in, wow, you have a lot of examples for ejectives. Where? Which languages? Sorry? Lakota, Georgian. What else? It's not a phoneme. They're not phonemes in British English. Those just ofada. They just occur by accident somehow, sometimes. And what was one of the earlier languages that we learned? Also Hausa has ejectives. So remember those representative languages. And finally we have a glottal stop. We find glottal stops all over the place. And they're often allophonic, but there's a language in which they are phonemic, namely Hawaiian. Okay, there you go. So you've got representative languages for all of these really interesting, fun sounds. We're going to mark our exercises. Our time is going by fast, isn't it? Let's go. How about if we just go around the room? Is it possible to just, Mindy, to focus on the whole class so we don't have to keep moving? So just focus on the whole group of students. It's not a large class now. So we'll just take turns after Jerome. Whose turn? Carol? Oh, that's the problem, is the reading, is the microphone. No, you have to keep on passing. Does it matter? Just pass around. It's okay? Okay. Just 照顺序. So I'm going to read the text and then you read what's in the blank. Why doesn't one person take like 4 answers? 一个人4个好了. That way we don't have to pass it around so much. There are 3 principal airstream mechanisms. The
Philharmonic,
airstream mechanism, the
glottalic.
if you want a bangchang, that's fine with me.
Thank you.
The glottalic airstream mechanism and the
Valeric.
Valeric. And I don't say Valeric, I say Valeric. Valeric. Airstream mechanism in normal utterances in all the languages of the world. The airstream is always flowing outward if the pulmonic, then you just keep it. We'll keep on doing this. Airstream mechanism is involved. So remember, stops with this mechanism are called plosives. So plosives are defined as stops produced with a pulmonic airstream mechanism. That's how we define plosives. Those are stops produced with a pulmonic airstream mechanism. The only mechanism used in some languages to produce some sounds with inward going air and some sounds with outward going air is the
glottalic.
Glottalic. And I need to turn the page 1 minute. Glottalic airstream mechanism. Stops made with this mechanism acting ingressively are called implosives. Stops made with this mechanism acting egressively are called ejectives. The mechanism used in language to produce sounds only with inward going air is the Valeric airstream mechanism. Stops made with this mechanism are called? This is so easy, isn't it? Stops may vary in their voice onset time. In this respect, we have a typo. Cross out O. That's a new typo. That was not in the last edition I checked. 这是新的一个笔误，印刷错误。In this respect, b, d, g, r, voiced stops. P, t, k, r, voiceless unaspirated. 可以加 unaspirated if you want to. Stops and but the k, not p, t, k. So the second one is b, the, g, and p, t, k, r. And then k is missing its. Yeah, gosh.
It's okay on the CD.
It's okay on the CD. It's not in the book though. And that's unacceptable. Gosh. These are new mistakes. Some of the old mistakes were fixed or half fixed, and then they brought new ones in. But if you've ever done publishing, you know that's really common. It happens a lot. Okay. It's not an excuse, but it does happen a lot. So k, add a little raised H. R, aspirated, voiceless aspirated stops. The stops, b, the, g, which occur in Hindi are called murmured or breathy stops. Remember, they're the same thing. Breathy stops, murmured stops. The stops, b, the, which occur in African languages such as Hausa, are called creaky or laryngalized stops. All right, narrow transcription. I really don't want to write all of it on the board. I hope you can follow yourself. I'm just going to show you my book and point to the general area. Everybody kind of look at the book. This is not very reasonable to do it this way, but I'm going to do it anyway. So here we have aspiration from h, he. And I'll have to look at the words so I don't forget it again. It's he started to tidy it. Okay. So E, this whole thing is the E. S, this is all noise for the S. You should be looking this way. S. And then here we have the hold phase of the stop, release. We have a little bit of aspiration here. S, 一点点. And here's the vowel plus the R. Star. I think there's an R in there. If it was British, there's no R. We have started. We have more aspiration. This must be British, so take out the R. We probably don't have an R. Started. Started. And then here we have the vowel. 就是线最高的地方是 vowel. They stop. Started. To. It's quite clear here. T 后面要加一个 raised H for aspiration. To. And then the 比较短的、比较矮线的地方是 aspiration， 比较长线的地方是 u， and then tidy, there's a pretty long pause there for the hold. Tidy, we've got a burst here, t, release 的时候这是 burst， 然后呢小一点的噪音是 aspiration， ah has longer vertical lines. The second part of the diphthong I, E, has shorter vertical lines. It's all the vowel, but the ah is more sonorant. It has a smaller, what? 振幅 amplitude, yeah. And then the, we've got voicing here. We've got real voicing, real honest to goodness voicing. Tidy. 因为左右两边都是母音，所以那个的 voicing 持续不断。This is the. And they wrote it there. Tidy. And then 然后那个 e 跟 i 差别不大，可是它的长的样子有点不像。不像的地方就是 i 的开头。对，都蛮像，可是到某一个地方你发现那些词线跟那个中间的那些小线有点不一样，长的样子有点点不一样。Tidy it 差别不是很大。And then it 断了。It must be just an unreleased final stop. So let me just point again. Kind of look here. 看一个大概的区域就可以了。当然那些细的东西可能看不见。He started to tidy it. I know I sound kind of 智障, but okay, and then let's give me your measurements. Just shout them out. First stop and started, how many milliseconds? It's to the nearest 10 milliseconds. 所以不要说10以内的数字，不要，都是 multiples of 10. So started the 第一个 stop. How long? How many milliseconds? About? Goodness. Here. This is 50 here. So 它的 scale, 还缩得蛮小. I have 20. It's the first stop in started. 它那个 voice onset time 还蛮后面的，蛮延后的。I have plus 20. Plus 20. 你跟那个50一比的话，大概有20毫秒。All right, second, is that okay? You got it? Plus 20. Second stop is started. 这里，这个不比这个短哦。I have plus 20 to 30. 因为 it has to be a multiple of 10. So I have plus 20 to 30. How about the stop in 2? That one's especially clear and long. Ooh. How long is that? 你看这边的尺度 look. 这边的尺度 50. 套上去差不多就是50. Right? Did you all know how to do it? 懂得怎么做吗? All right, that's about plus... Actually, I have plus 50 for that. Yeah, for 2. Plus 50. Then the first stop in tidy. Now that's a 实词, and it has stress, so we can expect it to be longer. So what did you put for that one? Okay, the first stop in tidy. Tidy, about 80? Tidy. Yeah, it's probably about 70 to 80. Probably about 70 to 80. And then the second stop in tidy, the d. 它可能不到可能差一点点。它不到100，至少用手比的话，它差一点。And is it plus or minus? It's minus, yeah. I have minus 70. 我量的时候是 minus 70 because it could be 80, minus 70 to 80. It's not to 100. Okay, and how about the next ones? A pi, how much? Plus? Okay, I have plus 50. And by? Minus 10, minus, because that's voiced. It's got a vowel before it. And then a spy? Plus 10. There's a tiny bit of aspiration. So plus 50 minus 10 plus 10. All right, label the diagram below so as to show the sequence of events involved in producing a voiced alveolar implosive. Let's have somebody read theirs because you can't just shout this one out. Where's the microphone? Okay, go ahead, Sylvie. Number 1.
Closure of the blade and alveolar ridge.
Once more, please.
Closure of the blade and alveolar ridge.
Okay, is it necessarily the blade? Yeah, I guess they do picture the blade there. I was thinking the tip, but in fact they do picture the blade. You're right. Against the alveolar ridge, that's fine. 2.
Downward movement of the vibrating glottis. Air from the lungs continues to flow through the glottis.
Okay, that's exactly the way it is in the book, and that's right. And 3.
A little change in pressure of the air in the oral tract.
In the oral tract, right, or the vocal tract. Either one's fine. And say change again.
Change.
Make it a little longer, please.
Change.
A little more A. Change.
Change.
Okay, now it sounds better. And then 4.
The blade and the alveolar ridge come apart.
Okay, so the tongue blade, the tongue lowers, the tongue tip, the tongue blade lowers away from the alveolar ridge. That's fine. Okay, next reader. And read part E. And then we have performance exercises, and that'll do it for today. Okay. Complete the diagram below so as to show the gestures of the vocal organs required for producing First of all, try to make a lateral click, everybody. Most of you can do it now. Let me hear each of you individually to find out who still needs to work on it. Oh, wait. Wendy, you're doing a dental. You're doing a dental. And Wendy, you need to work on it. A lot of people can help you now. But you have to keep the body of your tongue stuck against the palate, the hard palate. 就是舌头那中间的鼓起来的地方就粘住上了。Okay, practice it. Everybody quiet. You have a different sound there. Try it again. It sounds like you got the right idea. All right. So Wendy, you'll need to work on it. So it's a lateral click plus a velar nasal. Okay, go ahead.
The front closure is the tip of the tongue is against the alveolar against the alveolar ridge.
The alveolar ridge.
The alveolar ridge.
Ridge. Uh-huh.
And
okay. And the back?
And the back is the velar closure.
For the velar closure.
For the velar closure,
Mm-hmm.
the body of the tongue back of the tongue raised to form velar closure.
There we go, to form a velar closure. Very good. Okay. 2.
While both the anterior and the velar closure are maintained.
Good.
The body of the tongue moves down.
Not moves. Moves. Yeah.
Down.
Good.
Down. Decreasing the
Don't make it too long. Decreasing
the air pressure
in the front part of the mouth. Okay.
in the front.
And 3.
The partial vacuum is released by lowering the side of the tongue.
Okay. Sides. Side or sides. And 4.
The velar closure is released.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Performance exercises. I think we'll finish just on time. Yeah.
So I produce the velar goes down to produce the voiced consonant.
Where does it say? Point to where you are.
Here
Velum goes down.
and
Air from the lungs continues to flow through the glottis.
and after that.
Air from the lungs continues to flow through the glottis. That's a good point. I didn't put that in. Air from the lungs continues to flow through the glottis. You're right. It's true. That's right. And it goes out through the nose. Okay, that's good. Way lower. Okay, anything else? All right, let me write it down so I have it ready for next year. Okay, let's do the performance exercises. A large number of non-English sounds were discussed in this chapter. About the same number of additional sounds will be considered in the following chapter. So we have a bunch of new consonants coming in the next chapter, but they're mostly going to be new things that we're doing at new places of articulation, like uvular and things. Beginning with the exercises given below, you should spend more time doing practical phonetic work. Try to double the time you spend doing this kind of work. Mainly what I want you to do is practice the sounds that we've learned so you can produce all of them, if you can't do all of them yet. If possible, you should spend about 20 minutes a day working with a partner, reviewing the material in the chapter, and going through the exercises given below. Review the different types of phonation. Start by simply differentiating voiced and voiceless sounds. We're going to use ah, so go from voice to voiceless, and then back and forth again. Go. Ah, ah. Now add breathy, voiced, or murmured sounds to the sequence, and those will go in the middle. So we start with voiced, breathy, voiceless. Go. ah. Okay, now I had creaky voice at the beginning, so ah. Good. Now begin with the glottal stop. Ah. Okay. Now do it in reverse. So Now try to do it in a smooth movement, but don't try to go too fast because you'll miss something. So glottal stop, etc. Go ah. All right, reverse it. Ah. All right, let's try it with and keep moving because we can't do all of them. So go glottal stop, creaky, etc. with Let me do it. I think you're doing it okay, but it's Go ahead. All right. Actually, I think you're fine with the rest. I went through these before class, and there's nothing hard. You're good at differentiating between fully voiced and voiceless unaspirated, and you can add voicing when you need to, use less voicing when you need to, add more aspiration when you need to. It's mostly just exercises in those. And then we've got the funny made-up data in Q. So please do these on your own. You'll be fine. The only ones that are a little hard are U, clicks with the nasals. Work on those. Those are a little harder. And then more nonsense words in V. So please do these on your own. I don't want to keep you over time. We'll have our test on Monday. And we may go over the exercises after the test, or even before the test. I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then start on Chapter 7. Don't forget your notes on Monday. Keep me posted in your notes on progress in your pronunciation improvement program. And we'll see you on Monday.